Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation about our Esports Academy here at the Grapevine Public Library. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we define esports, where that fits in, why libraries are a good venue for this kind of programming, and then about some of our considerations and thought processes as we built our esports space here. Okay, so let's start out by talking about some definitions, in particular, what is esports? So there's some definitions that I pulled off of the internet, just some random searches. The first one is from the North American Scholastic Esports Federation, and it states that esports is a term derived from electronic sports and is essentially competition in video games at a very high level, similar to traditional sports. And the other definition comes from the Harvard International Review, and it says that esports are video games that are played in a highly organized competitive environment. You'll notice both of these definitions mention a high level of competition or organization. So that's something to keep in mind when we move to our next definition. I think personally the easiest way is to think about it as a subcategory of sports, similar to like a winter sports or aquatic sports. For me, it could be defined as a game or task defined by a set of rules that is played in a virtual environment, maybe through electronic interface and within some sort of a competitive system. So let's look at the next definition. What is regular sports or traditional sports? And these are just some other definitions I pulled just for comparison. Webster Dictionary says that it's physical activity engaged in for pleasure. And the Cambridge Dictionary returned a definition of a game, competition, or activity needing physical effort and skill that is played or done according to rules for enjoyment and or as a job. So something to notice about these two definitions is that there's no mention of high-level gameplay, and in fact, pleasure and enjoyment are specifically included. So I put these images together to kind of illustrate the idea of how distinctly different the two are viewed, even though they share characteristics and qualities. Generally, when we think about sports, there's a more inclusive vision of the activities that fall under that umbrella, from professional all the way down to scholastic, recreational, and even the practice drills that help skill building. When we think about esports, it tends to conjure images of giant, bright arenas and two world-class teams facing off against each other. So it bears in mind that we may want to kind of reevaluate how we consider the two. The current narrow definition of esports is most likely a symptom of how it's evolved and established legitimacy. Within the growth of esports, you can trace sort of a trickle-down effect. Professional leagues have sort of led the way by generating the business and the revenue, and college leagues emerge to be kind of symbiotic with those in the same way that other college sports do the same, the way they feed into the professional circuit. Not only the players, but the coaches and the casters and the technicians. And as college leagues grew, we start to see the high school leagues manifest themselves, encouraged by the opportunities such as scholarships and any other accolades like UIL competitions and other scholastic awards. So I think the semantics of literal definitions can be argued over because what something is or means can be quite relative to each individual. They serve as a good starting point for our discussion, but I'd like to move on and talk about a couple of thoughts beneath the defined idea of sports and esports by drawing a parallel using basketball. So we'll take a look at it. So I think in this image, we definitely can see that this is basketball being played. So if we look at the next image, I think we can agree this is basketball being played as well. It's not on a professional level, but it's a recreational pickup game. So if we even go a little deeper, we can say this is basketball being played as well. Even though it's just one individual, there's no referees, and he is just practicing. But he's practicing an aspect of basketball that he's going to put to use in a game. So it definitely falls under the umbrella. And even further, we look at this. This is also could be considered playing basketball. Drills like these are going to improve, speed, and they will put that to use in the activity playing basketball. And if we go even further, one more, even weight training can be considered basketball. If the purpose for the weight training is that you're going to be focused on playing basketball, you can consider that under that same umbrella. So when we think about these, you can think about the comparison to esports and what esports actually can be considered. Think about as opposed to the big glamorous arenas, you have kids each in their own bedrooms, grouping up and playing for a recreational game. You have one individual doing drills and working on his reflexes using like an aim trainer or something else like that. So all of that, I think, falls under the esports umbrella. So why is esports important? Similar to traditional sports, it provides an avenue for so many developmental, educational, and other skill building opportunities. Because esports and gaming is tethered to technology, it is also commonly a doorway to the acquisition of a larger variety of practical skills. I mentioned some of the skills that can be strengthened as an esports athlete, which are not any different from the benefits of traditional sports. A lot of them go hand in hand. Games are a great motivator for some, and that in itself can create a desire to learn more. So then what sets esports apart? Esports programs offer a way to cultivate interest and buy-in and learning opportunities, not only in a new way, but for some groups of students that are uninterested or unable to participate in traditional sports. So maybe they're smaller than some of the other kids, or they have a disability, or they're just plain not interested in playing sports. We can take a look at some of these skills. The normal social skills, these are kind of shared learning with the traditional sports. You get a lot of teamwork and cooperation. Communication is learned, rules and fair play, how to encourage others and support your teammates. It builds your confidence as you get better and practice. So the next set of skills developed can be mental health skills. So we look at teaching motivation and how to harness interests and focus them into a meaningful direction, generating buy-in towards scholastic responsibilities, teaching structure, learning the importance of establishing a schedule and how to set goals, how to deal with losing, and how to deal with the anger that generates, developing patience and persistence, and even anxiety and stress management. Competition helps teach students how to cope with losing in a big way. One of the things I noticed from doing robotics competitions on a yearly basis is we would have the new younger kids come in and they would work on their robots, and then the day of competition would come and their robot may not perform as well as it was supposed to perform. And we had a lot of kids that would, start crying and not know how to deal with that. So I think exposure to that is a really important lesson to learn, because those kids would come back the next year and they'd be more prepared and they would understand what they needed to do and how to manage their expectations. Moving on to other skills, we also have some skills that overlap with traditional sports here when we talk about problem solving and decision making, management, time management. All of these are kind of important critical thinking skills. There are even lessons outside of technology that I can attribute to my experiences on a team in a challenging environment. I always tell people that I feel like I learned more about management from leading a team in a competitive video game environment than I did during any of my management courses in college. So then we get to the specialized skills that you can pick up through esports. Like I said, the fact that esports and gaming is tethered to technology is what creates these convenient opportunities, really. I can elaborate based on my own experiences growing up, and I definitely say that I taught myself networking basics in high school because I was motivated to host LAN parties for my friends. I think the sky is the limit now that esports has grown into the industry that it is. The immediate overlaps include aspects related to streaming and broadcasting, such as engineering, production, audio, video editing, shoutcasting, organizational and event management, marketing, graphic design, and knowledge in a variety of softwares, including things like Twitch, OBS, and Discord, and things like that. So, why are libraries such a good place for this? I think a common test phrase for a lot of librarians, as we consider new ideas and projects and programs, we ask ourselves, does this make sense in a library? We looked at this combination of ingredients and we ran them through that framework of questioning. Is there a need for something like this? Why libraries? Does something like this already exist? Could another organization execute this project better? And we realized pretty quickly that there was a need and that libraries could uniquely address this issue. Esports can provide an avenue for cultivating traits like social skills and teamwork, confidence, stress management, staying calm under pressure, anger management, processing defeat, etc. For these students that are not interested in or capable of participating in traditional sports. And nullifying that barrier and bridging that gap is one of our objectives for the Esports Academy. And we talk about the digital divide is the metaphor that a lot of people use, expressing disparity between the portions of society that possess sufficient knowledge and access to current technologies and those that do not. So we had several goals and ideas behind this project. Through librarian colored glasses, it's not hard to look at the esports and see the gap that can be created by the high price tag that it comes with. including things like high-spec computers, monitors, and other peripherals, along with the software and games and high-speed internet connection. And a gap like that can put the benefits and opportunities of esports that we've discussed already completely out of reach for students who could have thrived in such an environment. So consider how this digital gap will effectively put developmental, educational, scholarship, and even career opportunities out of reach for a portion of students. It creates a big disparity. One way to think about it is imagine if equipment like a soccer ball had a $5,000 price tag on it. Thinking about it, libraries are super unique. There's nothing else like it. There's really no other organization that could offer this service in the way that a library can. Unlike internet cafes, we don't charge a fee. Unlike scholastic or collegiate programs, we're not limited to a specific age group or time of year. We're open during the summers and on the weekends. Other objectives and goals feel like they fall into place just because the space is what it is. The space is small, and we plan to include beginner-friendly classes and events so that we can try to eradicate the intimidation and the fear that new players can feel. We aim to cater to most of the player spectrum, from new players all the way to, teams with league matches. So moving on to discuss our design and implementation. The Esports Academy is a new space here in the Grapevine Library, created for the support and advocation and collaboration of the esports ecosystem, fostering an environment of team building and learning and socializing, entertaining, practicing, and competing. It houses 12 gaming PC stations, fiber optic high-speed internet on a private network, a large library of game software, the latest consoles, large display screens, and streaming and broadcasting equipment. It was designed to be versatile and give us the flexibility to use it in many different ways, such as hosting open playtime for various groups, adults, families, teens, tweens, holding focused sessions for practicing things like communication, teamwork, stress management, reservations for esports teams, holding tournaments, learning how to stream, and all kinds of other events. So there's some things to keep in mind as you begin to think about your own space, if that's what you're wanting to do. And it's a whole range of how complex the program can be. I would suggest coming up with a clear idea of what you want the program to include. How do you plan to get there, and who will be involved? Do you want your program to use consoles, PCs, or both? Do you have access to high-speed internet, or will you need to find a way to make it happen? Do you need your IT department to be involved, or do you plan on taking care of that on your own? There's a growing number of resources and organizations available to help at every level, from other libraries and schools to groups like the North American Scholastic Esports Federation. So as we were thinking about our space, the internet was a huge difficulty. The way that our city was set up, we didn't have access to very fast speeds outside of our IT department, which is then tethered to some of the other buildings. We looked at getting our own private fiber line for the room, and that was going to serve our needs best. It required, taking bids from companies to get the construction, to get the fiber installed. That's a big consideration. And then when you start considering the equipment, what do you want to have? How many screens and displays? You need to keep in mind that you're going to need to keep your space cool, because all that equipment runs very hot. So you're going to need fans, and you're going to need the temperature in the room turned down. You're going to need to consider your security, both for the hardware and software, so that the computers are secure. Nobody can get inside of them. Nobody can meddle with the operating systems. So that's a big consideration as well. You also need to think about your IT, like who is going to manage and upkeep all the software and the network security. Do you have an IT department that you can work with? Will that work well for the space? When we were considering hours, our library does a lot of programming on the weekends when our IT department is not around. So that was a big consideration that helped us decide to manage our network by ourselves. And then you want to think about what games you want to allow. We're pretty open here about all kinds of games. We try not to restrict people, but we're also open to parents not allowing their own children to play certain games. So we're very flexible. A lot of places will do games that don't have, as long as they don't have a realistic depiction of violence. If it's cartoonish, that's okay, that kind of stuff. So any kind of age restrictions, how you want to deliver that software. We found that Steam has a cafe system that you can apply for, and that way you buy licenses for the software, so that any computer in your space can just access the cafe server and load up the software, as long as they're inside the library and the space. So that was a good way that we kind of handle our licensing. And then you need to figure out your funding, because it's going to be very expensive. So the final piece of the puzzle for us was the funding. We knew that the cost would be quite substantial to get it off the ground, as a big upfront cost. Each year, the Texas State Library Archives Commission opens for grant applications in various facets, one of which is called the Special Projects Grant. And it's established to help libraries expand their services for the community in new ways. A lot of the time, these grants involve bringing access to new technologies and encouraging partnerships and collaborations. So we really had all the ingredients to make this project a reality. We had a vibrant local esports scene. We had knowledgeable staff. We had a supportive administration. And the funding was the final component. So when I was encouraged to apply for this grant, I was able to put a proposal together really quickly, because we already had the vision built. We knew, for the most part, what it would take, what we would need. Kind of gathering all that information was easy and quick. I submitted the proposal in February of 2020, and we received word at the end of the summer that year that we had been awarded the $75,000 to start this program. So that's about all I had. Thanks for listening. I'm going to leave my contact information here on the screen. If you have any questions, I'm always glad to help. I could talk about this stuff all day. And that email goes to both me and my coworker that works back in the Esports Academy. So you'll always be able to get one of us. So feel free to reach out. Thanks again.